It's a vegan world these days as corporations discover ethical eating is profitable. How PETA's corporate vegans convince companies that it's time to go beyond meat, dairy, even chicken seasoning, or maybe even donuts. Next on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this behind-the-scenes look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. Here we talk to the key players at PETA and the movement and ask them about how animal rights change their lives and how they stay motivated to make the world a better place for the animals. On today's episode, how PETA convinces corporates, companies like Panda Express, to go vegan.
We worked with them and were pushing them, and they kept dragging their feet, which made no sense given how easy this switch would be and how much people would care about this. And when they refused to take action, we launched an action alert, and over 234,000 actions were taken. Sometimes that's what it takes to wake a company up, is for them to realize, oh, you know what? We were wrong when we said our vegetarian customers don't care about this. People do care about this. And so now you can go get eggplant tofu, chow mein, vegetable spring rolls, super greens, all vegan.
David Beyer, senior corporate liaison, describes what it took to get Panda Express to dump the one ingredient it was using, chicken seasoning, that was preventing its entire menu from being vegan. Until then, so many people were fooled. Not anymore. It's just one of many victories that include national chain restaurants and getting them to switch from dairy to non-dairy, meat to new products like Beyond Meat. My conversation with David next. But first, thanks again for joining us here at the PETA Podcast. This is episode 62 as we go through a second season of shows. Please share a link with friends. Let them know the animals have a voice on the PETA Podcast. And if you just found us, welcome and keep binging. There's lots to listen to on the PETA Podcast. And now this update. Last Sunday, another horse died at Santa Anita racetrack, the 23rd horse to die in the track during a race or in training since last December 2018. The track had just reopened with new rules after being shut down since earlier in March after the 22nd death. The new rules primarily banned the use of the whip and limited the use of drugs and medications, but it did not stop another breakdown. See the video of that breakdown in the fourth race in our show notes. Now PETA is calling for California's governor to step in and call for an independent body to investigate beyond the state's California Horse Racing Board, which may be too close to the industry. And that's on top of an LA District Attorney's investigation and a call by Congresswoman Judy to see why so many horses have died. Check out our previous podcasts, 60 and 59, for more on Santa Anita and PETA's effort to end the cruelty to racehorses. And now our current episode. The vegan foods market is growing so fast, with demand for meat-free foods rising by 23% in a year. That's a $760 million market, according to reports on Nielsen sales data. So this week, Nestle, the world's biggest packaged food group, announced its launch of the Incredible Burger in Europe under the Garden Gourmet brand. And in the U.S., it will have the Awesome Burger under the Sweet Earth brand. The field's growing. Other competitors out there, Burger King and Impossible Foods, announced a St. Louis test of the Impossible Whopper. And Carl's Jr. in January began its rollout of the Beyond Burger nationwide. Beyond, Impossible, and now Incredible and Awesome. It's a great time to be vegan. But convincing corporates isn't always easy. And at PETA, David Beyer is one of those who takes modern activism to the boardrooms. Beyer talks about burgers, but also about the switch from dairy to non-dairy vegan cream cheeses at coffee and bagel shops, the ongoing push at Panda Express, ongoing discussions at KFC and Dunkin' Donuts, and more. Just how David Beyer gets corporates to go vegan. That's our topic on the PETA Podcast.
Well, we work with top corporations on a range of issues, ranging from animals used for food, for clothing, for entertainment, such as companies sponsoring SeaWorld, And so my focus over the years has been a range of issues, but primarily on food issues. So while PETA is a vegan organization, we also work with companies to some extent on animal welfare issues while also trying to get them to add vegan options. So trying to eliminate worst practices while trying to, at the same time, push them in a better direction and have them remove things like foie gras from their menu while adding things like vegan options.
So this is kind of like the modern way of activism, really. I mean, you're really going right in there with the enemy and trying to get them to change where change really can occur. I mean, as opposed to standing outside with a picket sign, you're in there in the corporate boardrooms. You're in there trying to, get shareholder, votes by buying shares.
Yep.
It's a kind of new way of activism, right?
It is. We find it to be very effective, and that's our end goals. We want to get results. We want to help animals, and we'll do whatever it takes. So we are talking directly with, top corporation CEOs or other executives at the companies to try and make them aware of these issues. At the same time, we keep all the other tools in our tool belt. If they are not willing to constructively engage and take actions to help animals, we're ready with the picket signs to get out there with the shareholder resolutions, to get into the shareholder meetings and get in front of the board. So we make sure that we are ready for any approach.
And I mention this and I dwell on it only because it just seems that things are modernizing all the time. I mean, if people have been part of the movement or part of activism for decades, and I'm, going back to, when PETA first started more than 30 years ago, it was, activists en masse with signs at demonstrations, but it's a little more sophisticated now and necessarily so, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's what it takes to get results. A lot of times when you're talking with these corporate executives, you're helping make sure they're aware of things that they're not even thinking about. You'd be amazed at how many top corporate execs don't know the difference between gluten-free and vegan. I'll go and start talking with them about how they need to expand the vegan menu options on their menu, and they'll start bragging about the new gluten-free crust or bun or whatever they just added. So, making sure that you have that direct dialogue so that they are learning, they're aware of what their competitors are doing, and they're aware of the issues is critically important to getting results.
I suppose you also begin to understand who you're dealing with. In a lot of cases, you see the ignorance firsthand of the enemy in the sense, huh?
Yeah, it helps to know what their motivations are. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's just they care what their competitors are doing, so making sure they're aware of that. For some companies, they have strong environmental goals. When we were working with IKEA on a range of issues and they wanted to start exploring vegetarian, vegan options for environmental reasons to lower their carbon footprint, given the drastic carbon emissions of the animal agriculture industry, we made sure that they were reviewing peer-reviewed studies, looking at the stats, being aware of these things when they're factoring their decisions. They decided at first they were going to add a vegetarian meatball, and we said, well, if you're doing this for emissions, look at the dairy industry, even the egg industry, what they're doing. You need to add a vegan meatball if you really want to lower your footprint the best you can. And when they proceeded with that, when they released that, they bragged about how much greener their own veggie meatball was versus their own, meat meatballs. And since then, they've taken more action. They've added vegan hot dogs. They're adding vegan ice cream this summer. So knowing what their motivations are can allow you to make sure that you're given the data to go in the right direction.
And now, when you mentioned IKEA, I was going to mention their Swedish meatballs, but I was thinking about how to make their furniture a little less frustrating and more human friendly. But I guess that's another issue.
I've experienced that myself too.
So, all right, IKEA is just one company, and we're going to get to the specific companies in a second. But I do want to talk about this idea of corporate liaison. You're in there. I mean, we're not just talking about a phone call. You're meeting with them. You're getting to know them, and it's a part of the negotiation process.
It is. It's a lot of it is building relationships over the long term. You've got to earn their trust, and just like they have to earn our trust. If we know a company is working in good faith to address issues, we can factor that into, are we going to pounce at doing a petition or an action alert or a protest right away? Or are they, having a hiccup? There, for example, there's some companies we know right now that are ready to launch with the Beyond Burger, but they want to make sure they have supply issues in place. There's others that we, don't get those good relationships with, and they will have to see the consequences if they don't want to work in good faith to help animals.
These are tactics that do get results, and these are tactics that a modern animal rights activist has to be aware of. And it doesn't necessarily mean that PETA at all is compromised at all, is it?
No, I think you can go to our victories page. If you go to PETA.org and go to the victories page, the amount of victories we have every month is astonishing. And a lot of those are with top corporations. You'll regularly see updates on that. Much of those are accomplished through direct negotiations with the companies. Again, the goal is to help animals, and we will do what it takes to get there. And, we may be working with companies that, for example, in the past, companies like Coca-Cola have been revealed through WikiLeaks to be spying on PETA, but we will still walk into their office. I went in there with cattle dehorners to show them directly what their dairy brands are doing to animals. We will go into the lion's den and, make our case to make sure that they are aware the issues on the table.
And how successful was it with Coke?
That's one area where they started, talking with their supply chain about dehorning in the dairy industry. And actually, we've seen their supplier make progress, but they have a lot more to do. Some companies prove more difficult than others, but with every single one, even if it's them starting to talk with their supply chains, when you have a powerhouse like Coca-Cola going to their dairy suppliers and talking about their dairy brands, that gets the suppliers to pay attention. It gets the farmers to start taking action because they don't want to lose that client. A lot of it is supply chain issues. If we start with the public-facing brands that have a lot to lose, they are going to apply the pressure on the animal agriculture industry to make changes because that's where the direct relationship is and that's where the change happens.
When you talk about being a corporate liaison and you're dealing with the main corporation, in this case, Coke, it's funny how these multinational corporations are so huge. Sometimes it's got to feel a little daunting as an activist, even though you represent PETA, and PETA is the largest animal rights organization in the world. It's got to feel a little daunting sometimes knowing that a corporation like a Coke and some of the others that you deal with have such broad tentacles, and that, to get anything done takes some work. It's not as easy as, like I said, previously, it's not as easy as holding a sign outside an office. You're actually inside, and even even once inside, it's hard.
It is. It's something where can require years of work, taking that long-term approach, making sure that they are making steady progress, but we have that end goal in mind. And sometimes it takes longer than we want, but if we think that the best approach where we're seeing the results is going to be private negotiations and continuing that dialogue so that we know that progress is being made, that's what we have to do. And if we think it's starting to slow down unnecessarily, then that's when we can go public and pressure them harder. But it is an exercise in patience to move these massive corporations into the right direction.
And sometimes these massive corporations are so massive and have such histories that who knows what they've been into until there's like a recent news report that the parent company, well, first of all, we mentioned Coke, and Coke used to be involved with the Nazis years ago. This was a story that was revealed a few years back that there was a brand, the Fanta brand, which is a Coke brand, was a German brand that, Fanta is short for fantasy, which was a brand that they used in Germany. And it was a pro-Nazi brand. And then very recently, I know that PETA has dealt with Panera Bread, and the parent company of Panera Bread is said to have, been pro-Nazi. They did a big study, and it showed that, the family is now disgusted by the past actions, and they're going to give millions of dollars now. So this is one of the things about when you deal with corporations that, it was Panera Bread, it was Krispy Kreme, because corporations, they end up controlling shares of companies that are thought to be American, like Krispy Kreme donuts, for example, from
the South, right, from North
Yep.
Carolina. Who would have guessed that? Oh, well, this company or this controlling interest had Nazi connections, and I'm sure it would shock all those good old boys in North Carolina that their donuts are had Nazi connections, or maybe it wouldn't. So when you deal with these corporations, do you find stuff like this, or do you do a lot of research on these companies, or are you really just animal rights focused?
Well, you have to be aware of what's going on. We work with a lot of JAB brands, so that was big news that I was following when it came out. As you noted, Panera, Krispy Kreme. They also own a lot of coffee and bagel chains. So Caribou, Einstein Brothers. Down the line, if you're getting a bagel in the morning, you're probably getting it from a JAB brand if you're buying it at a chain in the U.S.
Pret-a-manger too. That was another one, right?
Yep.
That's and you deal with Pret-a-manger.
We do. They have added a number of vegan options over the years since they've kind of expanded into the U.S. They've are doing some even more exciting stuff with our colleagues in PETA UK at the affiliate over there. And so you just have to be aware of this because that's going to affect it. If you're working with something, even just the acquisitions themselves, they are continually buying up brands, and that can change the dynamics of things. It can go both ways. It can harm relationships if suddenly this new parent company does not want to take animal rights issues and vegan options seriously, or it can benefit it. So, for example, we had been pressing a lot of the bagel chains to add vegan cream cheese, and now most of them are all owned by JAB. So when one of them started testing it, Einstein Brothers, we suddenly saw now Bruegger's is testing it, Noah's New York Bagels, which is well throughout California. So there's now literally hundreds, I believe it's about over 700 locations in the U.S. now that are for 3 different brands all testing vegan cream cheese. So it can help when, there's a big overarching parent company that controls a lot of brands, but it can also cut the other way.
People will say, hey, look, there are so many vegan options now, mostly these independent shops coming up. I was in Sacramento the other day. There was a totally vegan restaurant that hadn't been there, a year or two ago. And I was so surprised. I went to a Filipino vegan restaurant in San Francisco the other day. I'm just surprised to see all these independent places open up. Or where would you say the big corporates are? Is it harder or easy? Do you find them more open to try vegan brands or vegan, or do you find them still kind of reluctant?
It really varies. There's a number that are still reluctant, but there's a lot of momentum, and that's what's really key. It's also very segment based. So, for example, the pizza segment, we suddenly, realized a few years ago, we saw this opening where vegan cheese was becoming much more available and popular, and a few chains are trying it out. So we started pushing on that. If you look across the U.S. now, there's 50 pizza chain restaurants, right around 50 that have vegan cheese available. So we worked on that momentum to make others realize that and keep it spreading. If you look at the fast casual segment, which is kind of like the Chipotle's of pizza, so Blaze, Mod, Pyology, essentially every single brand, and this is a fast-growing segment, has vegan cheese now. It got to the point where we don't even have to reach out to all the companies. When a new one's opening up, they see what their competitors are doing, and it's one of the first things on their menu. Now we're making sure they stay competitive since everyone's doing it, taking the next step and adding vegan meats. Same thing as I'm sure you've seen with burgers. You have Carl's Jr. now with the Beyond Burger. We've been working with chains for years on that to spread the burger options. So part of it depends on the segment. Then there's new ones like, cream cheese for bagels. That took a lot of work, took celebrity letters, petitions with thousands of signatures to make them realize, hey, this is something people want. But when no one's doing it, you kind of have to break that mold and get the first one to take that step. After that, things can really start falling into place.
Yeah, it's funny because cream cheese would seem to be like the easiest step because all you do is like you might put out a little container, those little, individual containers out there. But I guess that's easier said than done.
Well, yeah, it's funny because it's one of those things where it makes complete sense for these chains that offer, the coffee and bagel chains, because if you look at them, ones like Starbucks, Caribou, others, they have multiple, they don't have just one, they have multiple dairy-free milks that, Starbucks has coconut milk, they have almond milk, they have soy milk. You go down the line, they're clearly seeing a lot of sales with this. They keep adding more. They realize that people want dairy-free options. And you can look at the pizza segment, as I just noted. But until the first one does the cream cheese, they just don't get in that mindset. Meanwhile, you tell them, hey, next time you're in the grocery store, go look at the vegan cream cheeses. You'll see 5, 6 options. So there's clearly people are demanding it, wanting it, but it takes that first mover for each thing, it seems, to really get that momentum. But once you do, and that's what we're here to do, is push that, make people get out of their comfort zone, try something new, make sure they're promoting it, and then see that progress.
All right. Now, one thing that people saw, maybe during the Super Bowl, they might have seen the Carl's Jr. commercial, and they might have just noticed more of the Beyond Burgers presence, primarily at Carl's Jr. Has that had much impact on the other burger outlets? There was a time when you ordered air burgers, right, at a place.
Yeah.
But now, the Beyond Burger, I find it, very tasty and very convincing as a meat substitute. Is it having an impact?
It's having a huge impact. That's what's making a lot of the difference, too, is these new brands coming out and introducing these very exciting vegan meats, vegan cheeses, such as the Beyond Burger. They're a company that has been really pushing the boundaries and generating a lot of excitement. I see it with the companies I work with. It's one of the brands that we always recommend. And if I haven't gotten into that point of the conversation yet, the company is often ready to raise it, saying, hey, I tried this new thing called the Beyond Burger. And when Carl's Jr. tries it and others, suddenly the other burger chains I'm talking with are all asking about it. We're making sure they get connected to get samples of it so they can test it. And then companies looking beyond that, have Del Taco about to go nationwide with the Beyond Meat beef crumbles. They've been testing it out after we talked with their CEO about adding faux meat options. Also changing their rice to be vegan. A simple thing like that. Imagine getting vegan rice at a Mexican restaurant. It wasn't that hard, but you have to sometimes just raise it with them, make them think about it. And then when they see these alternatives and, hey, we're not a burger place, but we can take this same thing and put it in a new format, and it becomes really successful.
Is there another chain that might adopt Beyond, or is Beyond a kind of almost like a proprietary thing with Carl's Jr.? They get to buy an exclusive, but is there another possibility of another chain having a Beyond Burger?
Another one that we worked with that has it is TGI Fridays. We are talking with others right now that are looking at it very seriously, and we expect a few to come out hopefully soon with it. Sometimes they can work with, a chain might work with Beyond to slightly customize it, maybe add a little different seasoning for different products to make it their own. Beyond has really been doing excellent work on dialing this in and making a delicious vegan burger. And so a lot of chains are just happy and excited to go with it as is. So several have it, and we expect more to do so.
I'm in California. I've seen the Habit crop up. I'd never seen it before, and suddenly there's like, a dozen all over the place here in California. What do they have, the Habit, and how has PETA worked with them?
Yeah, we've worked with them over the years. They're a very fast-growing chain, really blowing up. When we started working with them, they didn't have a vegan burger. Now, not only is the burger vegan, they had switched a number of the breads and buns to be vegan. They switched their honey mustard to a vegan sweet mustard. So you can go into the Habit now and get the veggie burger as is, and now it's vegan, whereas it wasn't before. We talked with them privately. Also, just like with Carl's Jr. and others, we did a burger chain rankings feature on our website, which, when they see how they're comparing to their peers and people are going to this website and seeing who got an A, who got an F, who's in between, who can do what, they get motivated and they suddenly jump at the opportunity to make sure they're standing out.
Well, who are the top in the burger chain rankings right now?
Let's see. The Habit is in there. Carl's Jr. jumped in there. A&W Canada has the Beyond Burger. We're hoping that we'll see that in A&W US, which is a different company. It was actually so successful in Canada that they've worked with Beyond to do a vegan sausage as well for a breakfast option. You've got Burger 21 has a couple of has a vegan burger option. Burger Fi, another popular fast-growing chain. There's Freddy's and Good Times, other ones that we've worked with to make sure that they switch to add vegan burgers. Johnny Rockets has long had one, as well as Red Robin. And, of course, TGI Fridays, as I mentioned. Twin Peaks, which is kind of like a Hooters-type brand. So it really runs the gamut. The quote-unquote better burger brands that are trying to make these really fancy ones like Umami Burger, right up to White Castle, who, when they were testing their original veggie sliders, we started working with them to make sure they switched to vegan buns. They were testing it out with a non-vegan sauce where they added a sweet Thai chili sauce. Saw a big hit with it, and now you can get it in grocery stores too, in the frozen section.
I know in New York, Shake Shack is big. What do they have?
Right now, they've got a B in the rankings. Because they're testing a vegan burger, a burger that you can order vegan, but it's not nationwide yet, but it has been expanding to more locations. And this is another area, just like with the pizza chains adding vegan meats, where the burger chains are realizing they need to stand out and do more because everyone's adding a vegan burger. So they're adding vegan mayo to their a vegan mayo sauce for their burger, which is in a bunch of locations. We're hopeful and optimistic that they'll expand it. It's something we've been talking with them for about a lot of years. A lot of chains are also, a few other ones are doing the mayo. Beyer Burger, which also has the Beyond Burger. The Counter, which has dozens of locations, they have a vegan mayo. And then some are doing vegan cheese. So you've got Yard House has a vegan cheeseburger. You can get a vegan cheeseburger at Beyer Burger, Umami Burger. So we're really seeing companies starting to go to the next level and really start to build out these vegan options.
Now, when people use or say they have a vegan burger, is it the Beyond Burger or is it a combination of Beyond or maybe Gardein or, a kind of a grain burger? Or what do you find is usually the go-to when people say a veggie burger? Because veggie burger has evolved through the years.
Yeah, so historically, if you went and got a veggie burger, there was a good chance you're getting Morningstar Farms veggie burger, which comes from Kellogg's. We saw this as an opportunity where if we can change this, we can change the results at thousands of establishments across the country and even the world, because most of their options are vegetarian, not vegan, at least traditionally. So we started talking to them about going to vegan for their, this is Kellogg's, their faux meat, plant-based brand, and we wanted to make sure that it was vegan, not vegetarian, make sure they were aware of the trend of what was happening with all the new brands coming on the market that were competing with them were 100% vegan, not vegetarian. So they just announced that they started a couple years ago transitioning when we started talking about this, and they just announced about a month ago that by 2021, all of their products will be vegan. And what's really exciting about this is their products are, available at 25,000 restaurants and other eating establishments like, K through 12 schools, colleges, universities, hospitals. So you're talking about, the veggie burger at Burger King is a vegetarian burger, but their bun is already vegan. And once this Morningstar patty switches, that means that Burger King burger will be vegan. Same with Chili's. We talked with them and confirmed that, they have a proprietary Morningstar Farms burger, but they confirmed with Morningstars that theirs will be part of that switch. So you're going to see, in the next couple of years, if there's a veggie burger on the menu, you're looking at a really good chance of it being vegan now.
Yeah, I always was curious about the Morningstar Farms burger because the thing that prevented it from being totally vegan was the use of egg white. And or from what I saw from the ingredients, there may have been something else that I didn't catch, but egg white was usually it. And it didn't seem to make sense because is it something in the machinery or something that they couldn't change the recipe, or they couldn't change the use of, or they couldn't not use egg white, or is it just a mindset, or is it just a matter of corporations not doing anything they don't have to do unless they're pushed?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of the latter. A lot of it is just they start doing things one way, it becomes a mindset, and then they don't change until they're talked to and engaged with on this issue to think about it. Vegan has been exploding the last several years. You're seeing, massive growth in the amount of vegans and demand for vegan food, but they've been around for many, many years. And so when they started, they took the approach of, okay, maybe using some egg whites in there, we can help this with binding, we can do this and that. They didn't really look at the alternatives because this is just the simple thing that people were expecting. They didn't really, there wasn't that competition, that demand. And by PETA going out, promoting of vegan foods and options, it really started to create that demand. Now, just even with this brand, if you look at it with the egg whites, there's going to be over 300 million egg whites annually that are going to be eliminated from their use. So even a vegetarian brand making the switch has a dramatic impact for helping animals. So let alone the fact that when corporations are replacing meat options with vegan options on the menus, as we've seen with chains like Beyer Burger, which just promoted the other day that they've got a 50% vegan menu now. It can have huge impacts to really help spare animals from the cruel practices of factory farming.
Now, I don't know if a Long John Silver's is still in business. I just don't see fish and chips type places around, or maybe a Red Lobster, but do you have fake fish? Because Gardein has a fake seafood type of thing. Do you see that as something in the offing for some of these restaurants?
Yeah, that's one of the areas where we're looking, we're always looking going forward. What's not being done yet? Where can we help really make a change and get momentum going? Vegan seafood, or in this case, sea life option. There's another great opportunity. The Gardein fishless fillets are delicious. And we have been presenting that to some of these major brands, like you've mentioned. Again, like the cream cheese, it's something where they haven't seen it too much yet, so it's a little harder to hit that tipping point. But we're seeing it across the board, just like vegan chicken. You now have it at Yard House, Pieology, others. It takes time, but we get those first few to try to take that leap, and then from there, I think you can really hit a tipping point, especially with all the amazing options different companies are coming out with now for vegan seafood.
Now, are you hitting up KFC for a vegan chicken?
We've long had a campaign on KFC. Many years ago, when we were working with them, they had agreed to do vegan chicken at some of their Canadian locations, but they have been resistant in the U.S. There was just news the other day, again, where our colleagues in PETA UK are doing much of the same work. KFC announced they will be coming out with, most likely, vegan chicken in the near future. They're still being a little quiet about it. I don't think we can say too much, but some of these companies often starting where they might have not as many locations, so it's easier for them to launch a test. And hopefully that will translate across the Atlantic.
It just seems to me that there are people who are staying away from KFCs because they have chicken and not a vegan or a vegetarian option or a substitute option. The substitute chicken or the vegan chicken is one of the easiest to replicate and the easiest to come up with something that is satisfying on a taste level and on a sensory level. There's got to be a reason why KFC balks. It has to be with the supply chain all throughout in the chicken industry, or the close ties to the chicken industry.
Well, there was just news the other day that McDonald's, when they got funding from the dairy industry for doing some research on their new coffee drinks when they'd come out with them a few years ago. And part of the conditions were if the dairy industry was going to help fund them to do this research to get the launch of their new coffee drinks, they would not add soy milk. So sometimes they can just be outright bought out. They sell their flexibility to these animal ag industries. We've seen that with Domino's as well, with really getting entrenched with the dairy industry. So sometimes there's money on the line. Other times they might only just be looking at their current customer base. I hear this a lot with companies saying, our customers aren't asking for this. And I said, well, do you know how many customers you're not getting because you're not offering it? And then when they go and test it and they suddenly see new people showing up, and not only those individuals, but they bring their friends, their families. In the restaurant business, it's called the veto vote. If I'm going out to dinner with my family or my friends, they know I'm vegan, and they're going to say, well, we know if we go here, you're not going to be able to eat anything. We want to all have a good time. So we're somewhere we can all enjoy. So we go to places with great vegan options. Companies like KFC are missing out on those segments. They're often focused too much on their limited base. And if they open it up, they can really make a big difference.
Boy, do I know the veto vote. It's so hard sometimes to get everyone together when I get other parts of the family, relatives who aren't vegan or vegetarian. In the past, it just was such a negative. And now when there are options, we can go out to these things or these new places that have these options. But I know for me, being a Filipino American, boy, when I found a Filipino vegan place that serves pork lechon vegan style, oh my God.
You're making me drool.
If you can have Filipino vegan options, there's no reason not to have vegan options in every mainstream restaurant out there. I had vegan pork belly the other day. That was very realistic. it would fool at least a drunken Filipino. I'm sure. I'm sure. So, all
Yeah,
right.
we're in a new era.
Yeah, we definitely. And, I noticed that there's a push to get Panda Express to take action. I mean, Panda Express, there's no reason to have regular meat options, especially when the meat is primarily used as a condiment. I mean, so why do they balk at Panda Express?
Well, that was a head, slap one where it just made no sense because they already had tofu on the menu. They had plenty
Right.
of veggie options, but even their veggie options were not vegetarian.
Wow.
What they did is they would put a chicken-based seasoning or broth into essentially all of their dishes except for their rice. And when we talked to them about this, they actually said, well, we think we have a different type of vegetarian client that isn't worried about the chicken seasoning. And I said, I don't think those clients understand what they're eating because, they're not going to your website and reading the fine print. They're going and they're seeing eggplant tofu and they assume when they're at the airport and they're busy and they're grabbing something quick, they're assuming they're getting something vegetarian or vegan. We worked with them and we're pushing them and they kept dragging their feet, which made no sense given how easy this switch would be and how much people would care about this. And when they refused to take action, we launched an action alert and over 234,000 actions were taken. Sometimes that's what it takes to wake a company up is for them to realize, oh, you know what? We were wrong when we said our vegetarian customers don't care about this. People do care about this. And so now you can go get eggplant tofu, chow mein, vegetable spring rolls, super greens, all vegan. For anyone listening, the transition's been happening during March, but it's pretty much, you have to make sure your local location's inventory is depleted of the old stuff, but it's pretty much transitioned.
Well, that's great to know that about Panda Express, which is, I guess, the Taco Bell of Chinese food, I guess. And not owned by the same company, but it actually has Asian owners, Panda Express.
It does.
And it's a naturally healthy thing for Asian food to be vegetarian. Most of the vegetarian restaurants were Asian oriented primarily. So, right? I mean, it just made sense.
Yeah, and it's one of those places where you can go and find tofu. It's one of the first places that really helped introduce it to people. Panda Express, back then it wasn't vegetarian, but now Panda Express, P.F. Chang's, Benihana, Pei Wei. So that kind of got it out there, and then suddenly people, now you see tofu popping up in other brands like Mexican or Tex-Mex, so Chipotle, Moe's. You're looking at pizza chains like Mellow Mushroom, Uncle Mattio's, even fine dining, Darden Seasons 52 and some of other Darden brands. Darden's the one that owns Olive Garden and a number of other major brands. You're seeing things like tofu pop up everywhere. I think a lot of that stemmed from it just being natural and Asian foods.
David, I've appreciated you being here with us to talk about, the entrees and about what you do as a corporate liaison to try to get these companies and restaurants, these corporate owners to move toward veganism. But these are corporates you're dealing with. It's all about profit. Is it profitable to be vegan?
There was a study recently about dairy companies that are investing in non-dairy milk. So, for example, dairy companies that actually invest in almond farms, for example, were the only ones that they were seeing making money. That's where the change is. Sales of milk is rapidly declining. It's been plummeting over the years, whereas you're seeing a surge in, right now the hot one is oat milk. Almond milk is still booming, cashew milks. So there's all these great options out there, and that's where you're seeing the momentum and thus the profit. And that's what we're trying to make sure companies are aware of. When a number of chains have launched the Beyond Burger, it's proven so successful that they're having trouble keeping it in stock. They were just, finding people coming in droves to get this option. So it's definitely making the companies aware too that this can be a real moneymaker if you add the right things and if you make sure that you're promoting it and your customers are aware.
Well, David, we spent so much time talking about, meat substitutes and that kind of thing. We haven't gotten to desserts yet. So,
I was thinking the same thing.
We'll have to bring you back and talk about desserts another time. But is there one major breakthrough in the dessert? And when you talk about desserts, the go-to is the vegan ice cream. There's lots of vegan ice cream options now. And Ben and Jerry's has had, vegan ice cream. And I guess Baskin Robbins has a vegan ice cream now too.
Yeah, well, they have a lot of different vegan sorbets. They tested out last year horchata with coconut cream, horchata flavor, and that proved really successful. So they do a lot of their new launches in the summer. So based on the success of that, we're optimistic that we'll see more launches this year. And then, yeah, you've got Ben & Jerry's. You can go a number of locations now, carry almond milk, so you can get a vegan shake. A number have vegan frosting, so you can get a vegan ice cream cake. So shakes and cakes, and every location has vegan ice cream. So we're really seeing things change, and we're trying to work with them to make sure that all locations have the almond milk and the frosting. And if people don't see it, they should be asking their local locations, because they all have the option to carry it. So a lot of it too is relying on the people to make sure that they're talking to their local locations. If you're seeing something at one location but not another, make sure that management knows about it.
The other thing is I've seen a lot of indie donut places and bakeries that are vegan. I haven't seen too many of the corporates, really. I mean, I still see the use of egg and dairy and cakes and things that don't necessarily have to be, non-vegan. I see donuts that could easily be vegan donuts, cakes that could easily be vegan cakes. Is there any breakthrough on the corporate bakers, either suppliers to supermarket chains or coffee shop or dining in type bakeries where you can get a vegan pastry? Is any breakthroughs there?
One area right now that's really interesting is at Dunkin' Donuts, actually, a majority of their yeast-based donuts, as opposed to the cake style, are already vegan in most locations. It's just that when with certain ingredient situations where they're sending it off to further locations and having to freeze or other things ahead of time, they are not able at this time. They have not switched to a vegan alternative for certain systems in their supply chain. That, I think, is a real opportunity. That's an area to keep an eye out for. I'm hopeful that we can see some momentum there. That's one area where a lot of companies, I think, have a big opportunity, is those vegan sweets, because really the flavors are usually, we always want people to make sure they're eating, healthy, but for those, when they want those sweet treats, it's really about sugar and or fats that are creating a lot of those flavors, and you're not going to notice the lack of eggs or the lack of dairy.
Okay, that's good to know that some Dunkin' Donuts are vegan, but I'll have to check that out. But listen, David, I want to thank you for just sharing with us what PETA is doing on the restaurant front. What I always am bothered, even though if you go vegan, the fat content is still kind of high in some of these substitutes. And it almost necessitates that we may need a vegan diet or a diet, to help us, reduce either, the sugar, the fat, or what, it's more than just the meat after a while. It's also, you have to just eat smarter too, which brings you back to the vegetables, which brings you back to the beans and the greens.
It's important to make sure you have a healthy diet. The good thing is vegan foods across the board are free of cholesterol, so you're already eliminating that off the table. They're typically, even when you're looking at substitute to substitute, you're looking at lower saturated fats. According to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, vegans have a lower rates of obesity, diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. So, a lot of it comes with the diet. You do want to be conscious, but when you're switching to a vegan diet, everyone always talks about feeling that immediate health benefits, their skin clearing up, they're losing weight, getting to a healthy weight. So it's something where a lot of it is inherent in the diet, but you do want to be, you can't have donuts every meal.
Yeah, well, it's vegan diet is no guarantee. I mean, it's healthy, yes, but people still overeat, and there's still the phenomenon of I wouldn't say the junk food vegan, but there's certainly the phenomenon of the overweight vegan, which I was for a number of years. I've rectified that a little bit, but it's when you see all these options, it's hard to say no, right? I mean, I think I gained 5 pounds at the Filipino vegan restaurant. Well, all right. Well, listen, David, thank you for just sharing this information, and we'll have you back on the show soon.
Great. It was nice talking with you.
Thanks, David.
David Beyer, PETA's Senior Corporate Liaison, on what it takes to get corporate restaurants to go vegan. And if you're a Panda Express fan, now you know the chicken seasoning is out. For more information and to take action on the vegan push and other issues, go to PETA.org. And that's our program for today. And you can contact us at PETA.org. Incidentally, if you're a regular listener to our show, well, hey, you can find me on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK, or on AMOK.com. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on Apple Podcasts where you can rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. And don't forget, you can help the animals and PETA, especially if you have Amazon's Alexa. Just say, Alexa, donate to PETA. Our music is provided by Carbon Works. Check them out on YouTube. And thank you for listening. Join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.